And Brandon, let's move on. The next team we're going to take a look at this one's in the top 10. The Redskins were not. I forgot about that. They're at 15. But the next team we're going to look at are the Denver Broncos. And this is a team that is very interesting. One of the teams that I know you mentioned when we did on the Primetime podcast a long time ago, where we predicted where all the top 5 quarterbacks would go. The Broncos were a team we brought up because they've got Joe Flacco. Is he really the answer? Probably not, but at least he's there to lean on, and they could really take a quarterback if they want to or trade up for one in the top 10. But according to Todd McShay, here's the quote from Todd McShay, and I'm getting this from Mile High Report of SB Nation. I'm hearing that the Broncos will not be taking a quarterback in the first round. Instead, they are more likely to roll the dice with Joe Flacco and attend the other needs. If Denver doesn't go defense here, which is a possibility, it could go with Hockenson, TJ Hockenson from Iowa. But I'm also told Michigan inside linebacker Devin Bush is in play. So I want to ask you, Brandon, with that being said, Broncos probably not going to take a first-round quarterback. They're going to look defense. Devin Bush could be the guy they look at. But if they go offense, Todd McShay is kind of hearing that TJ Hockenson might be the guy. What's your thought with the Broncos? Who will they pick at number 10?
Yeah, I've kind of switched courses with the Denver Broncos. I don't think they are going to go with a quarterback. I think they're going to ride it out this year. They're going to go with Joe Flacco. They're not going to be good. But I think that they are going to stick with him for at least this year and maybe another, to be quite honest with you. Joe Flacco, he's got a little bit more in the tank. Nothing that I think is going to take them to the playoffs. I don't think Joe Flacco's there anymore. But I think he is a guy who will be able to work the ball down the field a little bit better than what Case Keenum was able to do last season, which is just unfortunate because he did so well with Minnesota the year before. But
situation.
I am thinking, yep, absolutely. But I'm thinking more along the lines of a tight end for the Denver Broncos, because what's been something they've been missing for a long time. They've had some wide receivers, but they have not had a tight end. They've had some running backs, but they haven't had that tight end. And for a team that has some young wide receivers, being able to go and add a young playmaking tight end, again, TJ Hockenson, certainly a great player. Noah Fant is there as well, who I think is certainly a great player. Opportunities to grab a guy that is Travis Kelce-esque, that a lot of people compare to the Chiefs tight end in terms of skill and build and ability to go up and get the football, and plays like a wide receiver, not necessarily a tight end. Body of a tight end, plays like a wide receiver. And that's where the Denver Broncos could possibly turn to. And I think that it could be a smart idea for them to do so, because they need more offensive weapons. They need more guys who can make plays and make plays down the field. So tight end, I think, makes a lot of sense for the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, for me, I'm kind of on the ropes here. And the reason why I'm on the ropes is I feel like either offense or defense would not be a bad idea. And I know you're sitting there at home. Well, Ricky, if there's only two sides of the football,
special teams could be special
teams. Yeah, they're gonna take Andy Isabella, the wide receiver out of UMass, and he's gonna be their punt returner. That's what they're gonna do at number 10. No, I'm kidding. But the thing that I think about with Denver is, because I was looking back at, while you were kind of giving your thoughts, I was looking back at some of my mock drafts, and recently I've been on the quarterback train. But if you look back, if I've gone offense, I went offensive tackle, Jonah Williams. Almost said Jonah Hill. He's not in the draft.
He's not this year?
Jonah Williams I've gone with. But most of the Broncos, and this was even when they were higher in the draft before they settled in at 10, was defensive tackle. Like, I had Ed Oliver there in a couple of my mocks to the Denver Broncos, because defensive line is also a need for them. They need help on the defensive line. They could use some help on the offensive line as well, offensive, defensive lines. Linebacker, obviously, why they're probably looking at Devin Bush because they do need linebacking help also. But then also tight end. I also think that if DK Metcalf's there, he could be a good pick for them. And the reason why I say that is, yes, they have Cortland Sutton. Yes, they have Emmanuel Sanders. But I think Emmanuel Sanders is on the way out. They got rid of Demaryius Thomas. He's gone. And I feel like Emmanuel Sanders will be the next one to just kind of leave or get traded because he's getting old and he's not producing for Denver like he used to.
I'll disagree with you a little bit there. Okay. I think Emmanuel Sanders is still pretty productive for the Denver Broncos.
But he hasn't been the breakout receiver that he used to be for them. Maybe that's because Peyton Manning's not there anymore.
I mean, I think part of it has to do with the person who's working you the football. I think he's definitely still has stuff left in the tank. Sanders does, but he's the veteran guy there now. People are looking at him. I mean, he's got plenty of years on him, that's for sure. But I think he's still got plenty left to go in the tank. I mean, look, Demaryius Thomas. He signed with the New England Patriots. He obviously believes he's got some left, and they do too. But I think that he's better than what maybe you were making him out to be with that statement. But he certainly is the old guy on that in that wide receiver core with a lot of young guys there as well.
And the thing I will say too is the thing I like about hearing Denver not drafting a quarterback is I'm starting to sit there and I'm thinking, hey John, maybe you're learning from your mistakes. Maybe you're learning that, you know what? Maybe I'm not the evaluator of young quarterbacks that I used to be. And also I start thinking that, because remember it was a couple weeks ago that there was news circulating that Denver really liked Drew Lock and that like Drew Lock could be a piece for them and that they could go up and get him. I start to wonder now, was that true and now things have changed? Or was that something that the Broncos let out, that John Elway's like, hey, we're going to set out to the media that we're really liking Drew Lock. Maybe someone will trade up with us at 10 so that we can get some more draft capital, move back, get a defensive guy, or, hey, move back, get one of those tight ends because two of them are going to be there above 12, I believe. I think that maybe John Elway's learning from his mistakes. Hey, I'm not the evaluator of quarterbacks that I think I am. I made a huge mistake when I drafted Paxton Lynch. I don't want to make that mistake again. So you know what? I'm going to rest on my laurels a little bit. We'll stick with Joe Flacco, much like we stuck with. Remember, everyone thought Peyton Manning was done after he left Indy.
Oh, yeah.
Those neck injuries, Peyton's done, never going to win again. Went to what, 2 Super Bowls, won one of them, if I'm not mistaken. With Denver, he beat Carolina and then lost in the Seattle one, right? Those were both Peyton Manning Super Bowls? Peyton lost?
Yes.
Because the Seattle one had the ball go right over his head.
Oh, yes. That's how the game started.
That was in New York. And then I believe Peyton was still there when they beat Cam Newton.
He was.
So you go to 2 Super Bowls with Peyton Manning. Not saying that you're going to go to 2 Super Bowls with Joe Flacco, but this has also been a team that when they went to those Super Bowls, what part of the team was their strongest?
Defense.
That's why I'm maybe leaning towards, if I had to pick between Hockenson and Bush, maybe that the Broncos go with Bush because that defense needs to be strong, especially with their head coach being Vic Fangio.
See, that's where I would say go with an offensive guy because typically your defense always has been pretty strong.
Yeah, but they're getting it's getting kind of old.
And I do agree with that. But at the same time, your offense needs to be, top notch. And when Peyton Manning was there, it was. I mean, I think what we saw with the Denver Broncos this past year too was that they didn't score a ton of points. They weren't lighting anybody up.
Yeah.
They had a really great running back in Phillip Lindsay, who came out of nowhere, and they did a great job there with him. But ultimately, they weren't blowing people out. They weren't winning games. They won 4. So So, again, a lot of people would then say, Brandon, well, there you go. They have no defense, but they also need to be able to score some points. So I think they're in a better spot defensively, even with some of the guys who are older. Offensively, yes, I think they have some of the right pieces in place with the wide receiving core. They're young. Mm-hmm. They still have time to grow and develop, and that certainly is understandable. And you've got to wait on that. You do. You just do. But I would say offense for the Denver Broncos.
See, and the only thing from this that I'm kind of like about is Devin Bush. And the reason why I say that is, in my mind, the Broncos need an inside linebacker. And yes, Devin Bush played inside linebacker at Michigan, but let's be honest, he's undersized for the NFL. At 5'11", 234, he's not a guy that I want inside. And maybe you could say, hey, we're going to put him inside anyways because they run a 3-4 according to the depth chart, so they've got the 2 inside linebackers instead of just the 1. But like NFL's draft profile says, and I'll say it, undersized 3-down linebacker with the speed and cover talent to make an easy transition to the will linebacker as a pro. So to me, I'm reading that and I'm thinking, all right, will linebacker, weak side linebacker, that a team is not going to draft you to be the inside guy. They're going to draft you to maybe be the cover guy on the outside. But usually in a 4-3, you want that outside to be a rusher, maybe because they are a 3-4. Hey, we could use a cover guy in our linebacking core. Maybe that's why they're looking at Devin Bush there. The guy I look at and I go, if he is there at 10, which in all of my mocks he has been, is the guy I would go with for them if we're going defense. So take offense off the table. I agree with you. If it's offense, we're going TJ Hockenson because they need the tight end position. But if they're going to go defense at 10, if you're John Elway, would you still go Devin Bush? Or if he's available, which I think he will be, would you be more inclined to go with an Ed Oliver to play inside on that defensive line because they're kind of bare on the inside of that line as well?
It goes kind of back to the Oakland Raider discussion that we had. Go with need. Go with where you're going to, where you really need the position the most. And you just made the comment, bare. Bare. We got nobody playing there. We've got no stopgap right there, and or anyone to be able to bring some pressure. So that's where I think they need to go with, and what makes the most sense. What makes the most sense, not surprise anybody for the sake of trying to be crafty, as we mentioned again in that Oakland segment.
Here's another question I'm going to ask you, is because I mentioned how I would go defensive tackle over linebacker if I was the Broncos and if I'm drafting defense. Let's say they do go offense at 10. They take a TJ Hockenson. Let's say he's there. They take a TJ Hockenson. Let's say even if Hockenson goes to like the Lions or the Jags, let's say they go Noah Fant, just for the sake of this argument. They go offense in some way at number 10. Could you see the Broncos being a team that trades back into the first round for something on the defensive, either on the defensive side? So like, here, I'll paint this picture for you. They go TJ Hockenson at 10. They make a trade with the Rams. They send the Rams excuse
me, I'm sorry.
So the Broncos would receive the 31st overall pick and a 4th round pick. And they would give the Rams a 2nd round pick, a 4th round pick, and a future 2nd. That's the trade. Do you see them either, if they go offense at 10, making a trade to maybe get a Jeffrey Simmons, a guy who, hey, we're not going to have him the first year because he tore his ACL. That's why we're getting the 5th-year option on him. And that's a defensive tackle that is really high on some people's boards and analytically is really high. Roto World's really high on him when it comes to interior linemen. Or the flip side, if they go with Devin Bush at 10 and a Noah Fant is there at 31, could they make a trade with the Rams at 31 to give some draft capital up to maybe get both of those needs in one fell swoop at the beginning and end of day one or night one of the NFL draft?
I would almost look at your second scenario of Devin Bush being there at 10 and then maybe trying later on for Hockenson to see if they can, work it both ways and win that first round, in multiple ways on both sides of the football. I could definitely see maybe something like that happening with the Denver Broncos, especially if they're not going for a quarterback, then they can really try and be aggressive at those other positions.
Because tight end to me it's still, as we get closer to the draft, it is my most intrigued position. And the reason why is, so in many mock drafts, TJ Hockenson, although I like Noah Fant better, TJ Hockenson is usually the guy that people think, hey, he's going to be drafted first off the board for the tight ends. But like in the top 10, no one in the top 5 is going to take a tight end. The Giants are going to take a tight end. They're going to go quarterback or defense. That really leaves to me the Jaguars and the Lions, maybe the Bills. But Jaguars and Lions are the only teams that I could really see taking a tight end in that top 10. If they don't, and he goes outside of the top 10, well, the Bengals could do it, but I don't think they will. And the Packers will. So, like, if Hockenson gets to 12, he's a Green Bay Packer. Get him up on the podium because they need tight end help. Yeah, they signed Mercedes Lewis, but Jimmy Graham has not been Jimmy Graham. Plus, they need help. Like, the face you just made is exactly the face you should be making when talking about Packer tight ends. And then after the Packers, it really, to me, depends. Like, the Titans, if they like Noah Fant, and they're like, hey, Delaney Walker's getting old, he's getting injured a lot, we could use him for a tight end, but they also need wide receiver help. They could be also looking quarterback help because they just traded for Ryan Tannehill, but that's really because they need Marcus Mariota to start the season. And then when he gets injured, Ryan Tannehill should be able to play half a season, so they have one quarterback altogether. That's team one that could go for a tight end. You've got the Seahawks could go for a tight end. You've got the Texans could surprise, although they'll probably go offensive lineman. You've got, to me, the Colts could go tight end. So there's numerous teams towards the end of the draft that could go tight end. But if the Packers get theirs at 12, and that's Hockenson, there's a good chance Noah Fant could fall to 31, to where the Broncos, even though TJ Hawkinson's the guy they're looking at, they could still trade up, get a defensive guy like Bush that they like at 10, and get their tight end at 31 and have a good, successful day one to the NFL draft.
Done. Locked in. We're doing it. We're calling the Denver Broncos after this, giving them our suggestions.
I will ask you this. Last question I'll ask you about the Broncos. If, let's say, the pick gets to you, both Bush and Hockenson are on the table, and your phone rings, and it's either the Bengals, if it's either the Redskins, let's say it's even the Giants trying to move up for a quarterback. Which team, first off, do you entertain an offer at 10 to move back to get more draft capital? If you do, which team is the most intriguing to you? Or do you just say, screw it, I'm going to just make my pick here and not trade back?
Screw it, I'm making my pick. I'm not trading back with anybody.
See, I'm almost there because it's almost like if you like a guy, take him.
Yeah.
But to me, and this is also a thing, it's like Dave has said this on the NFL, the NBA side of things, where Dave's like, we've looked so much at these prospects where he's like, I'm watching their film and I'm like nitpicking them to this point where it's like guys I've loved, I'm starting to fall out of love with them because I'm watching their film so much and I'm finding things that I don't like in their game, although I loved them all year. On our side, I feel like we've looked so far at this process to where Now I'm looking at it going, yeah, you really like this guy, but I really think he could slide. I don't think a team is going to take him. So, like, for me, if the Redskins called, if either the Redskins, the Bengals, or the Giants, I'll say any three of them because they're all above the Steelers, who I think could really take Devin Bush. If any of those teams called, I'd be listening. And the reason why is because I would feel, let's say if Hawkinson's the guy, I'd take Hawkinson at 10. But if I'm leaning Devin Bush, and let's say the Redskins called me up and I got my phone and I'm like, hey, how's it going, Dan? What's going on? Oh, you really want a quarterback at number 10? Oh, well, there's a couple quarterbacks here that you could take. I may as well make a trade with him because I think Devin Bush could be there at 15. That's the thought that would run through my head if I'm John Elway. Then I get more draft capital to maybe make a move up into the first round to get a tight end at the end. And that's kind of how I think as a draft evaluator of, I look at where guys are, and you could see this in our live NFL mock. I'm the guy making most of the trades. I'm moving up if I'm the Giants. I'm moving up here. I'm getting my guy here. I'm trading back, getting more picks because I feel like if there's somebody you really like, go up and get them. If there's somebody you really like and it's like, okay, I feel like he could fall a couple more picks to me, get that extra draft capital so you have it later in the draft. But any final thoughts with the Broncos and who they're going to take at 10 or I'll ask you this to close it. Is this a smokescreen and they're just going to take a quarterback at 10?
No, they're not. I do not believe they're taking a quarterback.
Because you always got to ask that question. Is this a little cherry bomb or a little smoke bomb that's just floating up smoke so that we don't see anything?
I do not believe they're taking a quarterback.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Bronco fans, let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section. One, do you think John Elway's learned his lesson and is not going to take a quarterback in the first round of the NFL draft? Then number two, who would you want it to be? Do you want offense? Do you want defense? Which prospects you're looking for? You want Devin Bush? You want TJ Hawkinson? Let us know what you guys are thinking down below in that comment section.